Welcome back to the 2022 Retail Tech Show in London. At the moment, I've got the honor to speak with Dave Walker, who is, and I'm reading for a reason here, Head of Corporate Retail at Elavon. Dave, thank you so much for joining me. Looking forward to the conversation. So first of all, for folks who may not be entirely familiar with Elavon, maybe just tell us a little bit about the company's role here in this space, and then your role in particular.
I'm sorry?
Your role in particular with Elavon.
Yeah, so Elavon as a business is a merchant services company. So we enable payments, direct and through partners across the whole of the EU and North America as well. My role here within the UK is very much working with the sales and relationship management teams. And so I've been with the business probably just over 10 years now. And so I've seen quite a few changes in that period. But none so much as the last 2 years, and the pace of change today is really quite dramatic.
Yeah, so you've now prompted another 20 questions, and I'm sure we won't even have time for. But let's talk about the pandemic for a moment. Companies were just about to embrace wholesale digital transformation before the pandemic. Within days, weeks, or at the very least, at the latest months, they were forced to embrace that entirely in a wholesale way. How was this market affected? How was Elavon affected during all that? How did your clients pivot during that time?
Okay, so very interesting from a retail perspective. Obviously we had retailers that were very big in the online space already, so they obviously kind of pivoted quite easily. We had those kind of mid-corporate customers, and they had to try and do more to kind of, because everything was locked down, so they had to kind of do as much as they could to get online. And of course we had the smaller retailers who had a kind of online presence, but it just wasn't sophisticated at all, so they had a heck of a lot of work to do. But I think what we saw within retail was a very quick turnaround. Not quite the same in other verticals. So if we looked at hospitality, everyone was cancelling the hotel bookings. That created an issue for both Elavon and the customers, and that was something that we had to kind of work through. But we pulled together, and we came through it.
Did you happen to see, and we don't want to name names here necessarily, but did you happen to see any commonalities between organizations that were able to pivot quickly with some agility versus organizations that just couldn't quite get there?
I would say my view is quite localized, and so we did see some people that unfortunately didn't make it, and so we had some businesses which, so for an example, a business that's centered in the cities, selling things like cards and novelties and things, the sort of thing that people pop into and buy very quickly after work on the way to the train. Businesses like that, because of the lack of footfall, really suffered, and so some of those did not come out very well at all. I'm trying to think of a great example of one that went the opposite direction, and we might need to come back to that.
Yeah, we'll keep brand names out of it. So your unique perspective on the marketplace, because as an acquirer you deal with all sorts of different businesses, you have as you've said, a localized geography, but I'm guessing you have a pretty deep understanding of how those businesses work within that geography. Let's talk about some of the trends that you've been able to identify through that process, things that are happening now in the marketplace that retailers may need to pay attention to, and maybe looking out ahead, some things that may not be quite evident yet.
Yeah, sure. So if we talk about emerging payment technology, there's been quite a lot going on. We've all seen the buy now, pay later and the high growth there. Open banking starting to come through now. And omni-channel retail is obviously commonplace and being talked about at every level. In 2020, the e-commerce growth globally was somewhere in the region of 28%, which is the largest jump in 10 years. It's absolutely massive. And as much as that's really positive, there is a flip side to that, and that flip side is the fraud rates. So I think we've seen since the pandemic began, 55% increase in fraud. So when it comes to kind of looking at SCA and two-factor authentication and all that good stuff, it's really important that we have that. to create that safe payments environment so that customers feel secure. On the flip side of that, it creates friction in a world where we're trying to reduce friction. So one of the things that we've done at Elavon is to develop a solution known as TRA, or Transaction Risk Analysis. And this is where we can see the transactions coming through in real time. We can assess them against a set criteria, and for those transactions that we see as low risk, we can then send them on different routes, bypasses that two-factor authentication that reduces that friction, reduces that cart abandonment, and ultimately results in more sales, not to mention the customer experience. So that's been really good to see. Obviously from our own perspective, I know we're not the only people in the market that can do that.
It's remarkable to see the kinds of complexity that go into making a transaction simple for the consumer, isn't it? I mean, all in the name of simplicity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there was a question around, do we think online is going to dominate? Is there still a place for the store? And I think the answer is there's a place for both. There are some businesses that are absolutely suited to that online space. If you're an electronics business, you're comparing things like technical specifications, you're comparing the pricing, you're getting things delivered next day. It's very convenient. That works very, very well. Do we need to interact with people? On the flip side of that, people still like to kind of go out and shop. We know from research that we've done that over 50% of consumers today would prefer to shop in a physical location. So for me, it's less about domination and more about integration, bringing those two things together.
Let's put the crystal ball on for a moment.
Okay.
Let's predict in 24 to 36 months. What do you think that retailers? Let me rephrase this. I'm getting at an actual question here. What do you think consumers will be accepting and demanding of retailers that retailers should be paying attention to now?
Okay. I can tell you today that 8 out of 10 customers are saying that sustainability is highly important. 3/4 of those consumers would change their buying habits if they felt it would make an environmental difference. So I think with that in mind, retailers are going to have to flex and adjust to make sure that they can give consumers what they want. Social consciousness will dictate what they buy, when they buy, how they buy. It is a crystal ball and no one can predict the future. So I think if we were to talk about three things, if I said three things for the future, whether it be 18 months or the next 5 years, I think we're looking at sustainability. I think we're looking at digital omni-commerce, and we are also looking at the third thing, which is security. So going back to those fraud rates, a 55% increase. Those three things I think will be key.
You phrase it as security. It also is a nice overlay with privacy. I know, I can't tell you how many of the conversations that we have on a daily and weekly basis with merchants and with technology providers who are all still essentially sweating things like GDPR and trying to figure out how to not only comply as a baseline, but to remain competitive and maintain a frictionless process throughout something that is now, riddled with little compliance checkboxes and accept cookies and don't accept cookies, and I know that's a factor in your world, but my sense is that brands are no longer willing or even able to outsource those privacy compliance issues to anyone, and for so long it was, you kind of just assumed that payments were managed. And it's not really that way anymore. Now the GDPR and other regulations have put so many different pressures on retailers to make sure that they're not only compliant, but that privacy and the data is accessible and expungible and all that. So all that to say, your world got a lot more complex very quickly.
Yes, it has got complex. That's not my specialist area, but it is, and it's not getting any easier, is it? So
Well, I want to thank you for your time. Dave Walker is head of corporate retail at Elavon. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for your time. And I'll invite our viewers back to join me at the top of the hour or thereafter for one more interview here at the 2022 Retail Tech Conference in London.